Colleagues, good afternoon. So the topic of our today's meeting is keeping silent about the gaps in the projects. We also might call them unconscious or like gaps we are unaware of. My question to the audience, what do you think? How much time do we need to prepare the logs? I mean, we have an X, good sharp X, and so how much time do we need to cut logs for the stove? Like for a big stove, like Russian one, we have birch logs. So we need to make kind of one pile of logs. So we have everything, the material, we have the and we need to split this wood. You have knowledge how to split wood, you have strands for the 7 minutes. Okay, accepted. And what we can see in the real life when we come to, so we decide that we need just 7 minutes, but when we come to the site, we see that these logs have to be also sawed at first, cut in half, lengthwise, and finally we need 2-3 times more than we planned just when we thought about just splitting the wood. That's exactly how it happens in life, because there was something which was not told, like that these are big logs. Okay, I will introduce myself. My name is Yaroslav Kaminskiy. I've been working in IT for more than 25 years in Russia and abroad. I was a PM, developer, and 8 years I've been working as a business analyst. 2 years of those I work in EPAM systems. And the problem I've described, it's occurred in every second project that I've successfully implemented. So what is keeping silent and why should we talk about it? We are all quite experienced business analysts. We know how to make requirements. We don't forget anything. We describe them very well. And keeping silent, or it's not something that we forget to ask our customer or something. It's something lying outside of the context of the requirements that we've collected, and it can be revealed only at the implementation stage, and it can really affect the project. So this is the underlying problem that you will never detect until you start doing project. And neither of the methods of creating the requirements give us any guarantee that we won't encounter this problem. For example, in business consulting, it happens that the project, the concept of the project is formed by middles, by top managers, and after the presentation is done, we find a lot of hidden rocks which require correction of this concept. And if you keep that silent, if you hide that, that can be really critical and can really kill the project. So that's why it's very important not to keep silent about anything. So what are the reasons why people don't tell about the problems, this hidden rock? This is because we don't have time, it's procrastination, it's like suppression. Also, and these are the cognitive reasons, and also we have other reasons like imperfect, that the working processes are imperfect, or the requirements are changing dynamically. So how shall we live with these requirements if they are very much dependent on people, and we cannot exclude the factor, human factor, from this system? So we just need to understand that the omissions, we might call this omission, they exist, and it's more than this 10% that is normally allocated for risks. So our purpose not only to be aware of this omission, but to convert it into the problem that can be solved. From problem we come to a task. So now let's think about the sources of omissions and their effect. So the first source is it comes by default. What is that? So let's think about the project documentation. So you all know that we can write project documentation in two ways. First way is when it's written for those who know the subject well. So those who are deep in this topic, and it's quite specific. It might be not clear for freshmen. And the second type of description is for those who come directly from the street, starting from the basic things, step by step, to more complex ones. And normally the project documentation is done based on the first option. I mean, it's aimed at experts actually. And when a business analyst joins the project at the middle of its implementation, so he might encounter a lot of unclear things, and he has to ask his colleagues many things, etc. So this is the first option. The second option it's for experienced stakeholders, and during the brainstorm and during interview they have to omit some details of his work, because for him this is kind of comes by default, and we shouldn't even talk about that. So as a result, at the UART we see that something was omitted just because nobody even mentioned that, and no questions were asked. And this reason is directly connected with the cognitive mistake of knowledge curse. So people who know a lot about this or that situation, for them it's very difficult to put himself in the shoes of a person who doesn't know a lot about this situation. For example, when you know how to ride a bicycle, when you train somebody else how to ride a bicycle, you don't really understand what can be his problems, because you can't really put yourself into his shoes. The second reason is forgotten stakeholder. It's like imperfection of some of the customer's processes, or when one of the stakeholders is not just invited. I mean, stakeholders from the side of the customer who is not invited. I once was also working in infrastructure implementation project, and I was not invited to this box infrastructure project, and when it had to be deployed, it couldn't be deployed, and I could help, but I was not even invited. And these problems can be really tough, as you see. One more reason is beyond the scope. When a customer says that you don't have money for out-of-the-box solution, and let's attach something to the system that we already have, ABS as a little bit CRM, or a mobile app which is converted into the product catalog. And of course that never ends well, because the developers of the main functionality, they don't want to deal with that, they procrastinate, at least in terms of documentation, and then we see a lot of blank gaps in the information and the documentation. Yeah. So one more source of this omission is when we look at it at the angle we are used to, because a mobile app is normally considered as a set of interfaces, and as an app is developing, everybody perceives it like that, and people forget that we have an integration component, some data model. So cognitive distortion here is a so-called framing effect, when we choose the options how to resolve our tasks based on one context without trying to go beyond this context. So now when we understand the reason, we can proceed with the ways how to turn this problem into using some method. So first, based on my experience, if somebody seems to you, it doesn't seem, it's really is. So how shall we use this rule? If you have some intuition that something goes wrong in the project, but you cannot really put some finger on something, you have to analyze that. You have to draw an image or try to convert your inner feeling into some text, some description to come to some rationale. And maybe some methods how to work with the conscious might help, like it's relaxation, meditation, and also you can let your attention free, because your brain works even if you don't think directly about something, but your brain still can be processing some task because subconscious is working and it can give you a solution. And sometimes something that we call subconscious is just one of the methods your brain works. Next thing is to change the angle at which we look at the problem. So all the information systems in the project, it's a problem project with multiple ages, because like system consists not only of interface but of some data model, some system processes, infrastructure, etc. A classical example in this sense is the integration flow being tested at the test stand, but okay, it doesn't work, but everything seems to be fine. Then we look at the landscape and then we see that the source system and receiver system are on proxy, and at any stage the request sent can be declined. So that's what we don't have at the test stand, but in real life we have. So the problem might sometimes be completely elsewhere, not where we look for it. And now let's get back to the soft skills. So the help of the audience is very important. You know that in a team leads are the carriers of documented knowledge, but if you don't ask them, they won't tell you anything. So you have to communicate with team leads closely, and also system architects are the ones to be addressed because they know something about the landscape. That helped a lot as well. And after, if you call your team or team of your other experts, you might come to a solution to a problem. So now we know something about the reason why the mission occurs. Now let's think about the practical cases out of my practice. So the case number one, it happened when I worked as a project manager for implementation of Oracle Siebel CRM in a Russian commercial bank on behalf of the customer. So the category of mission was forgotten stakeholder. It happened in the business process. How it happened? So we implemented the process of consumers' credits. So it was like overdraft to retail customers of the bank. So I mean those who received salary to the bank cards of this bank. So and we decided to implement the first phase, and just before the deployment, we started to receive alarms from these departments saying that it will not work. And then I understood that it doesn't seem to me, and I made a business trip to Ekaterinburg and started asking in the departments why am I told this. And they told me that the process cannot be implemented in this way just because the logistics of the card issue won't be able to provide as many cards as needed within the allocated time period. So I mean to deliver the cards to Moscow like this. And why did it happen? Because we had to invite the representative of ABS processing department, but nobody was invited from the back office. backend office, and it ended by changing the angle of viewing, and we changed the business processes plus one CR. That was enough. Another case was in the same bank and the same project, and it was like laughing while crying. We taught the users, we implemented the system, and in the pilot town, in we in a small town where we made this pilot project, we asked, we had the students to go to apartments, fill in the questionnaire, but nobody in 2 weeks, nobody filled out any questionnaires, nobody took the credits, and the chief marketologist of this bank came to this small town. He came to a branch of the bank, and he sees impressive picture. So all the students, they are cleaning the territory of the bank. When he asked the director of the branch, why don't the students go to the apartments, to the citizens, trying to provide the credits? But director said that, but this is my people. I know better what kind of work they have to do. So this is the stakeholder with cognitive distortion, and he thought that he is, I mean, the director, and he knows better how to do that. So, and also we understood that we have a call center as a reserve channel, and we made it the main one, and after that the work was going quite well. So there were a lot of interesting situations, other ones in this project, but that was quite impressive. And also another project, a development of app for a large Russian retailer. It's a EPAM project, and in this project I understood that everybody looks at the app as a set of interface, and the interface were designed in a way so that some components were duplicated, not only in the description but also in the code. And here, changing the viewpoint, earlier I worked with a company where they taught me the discipline of designing, and I decided to create a register of visual components, a set of components to design the buttons, some images. And first I made it in the brain, in Confluence, and then I convinced the developers that we also need to design it. And I was really surprised when a little later I found out that the management was also planning to do the same, but they were planning it so long, and but at the end we've done that, and everything was good. So now let's talk about a foreign project. I had a very interesting case when I designed a service called Secure Internet for B2B customers of a Japanese provider. So the emission category was like by default, and we made a network scheme and decided to test it on our test stand, and we were surprised when the customer said, colleagues, you were introduced to us as very experienced. Everything should be working from the first try. This is so. They say that you are perfectionists, and we are perfectionists. So everything should work fine. And of course, testing was needed, and they were convinced of that finally. And actually, they were allowed to access the test stand, but only together with the convoy of the customer's employees. But yeah, that was finally possible, and it worked. So we managed to test it. So basically, that's more or less it. And drawing the conclusion, okay, what can we say? Emissions of the project cannot be a consequence of one reason. It's set of reasons, but it's not an obstacle to its verbalization and elimination. So the main thing, elimination of emission, is doable task. So you have to just analyze, try to resolve it, and okay, now that's more or less it, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you for your report, for your talk. That was very interesting. It really made me think about this. I'm Tatiana from PSB. So, have you ever considered the categorization of these missions and maybe the most dangerous one, for example, of those, or anything can affect the project at different stages? I think anything. I mean, the maybe forgotten stakeholder is the worst because if there is no kind of carrier of knowledge, so even if it seems to be logically complete, without this it won't be complete basically. In math it's Gödel theory. Mm, so when you can place the more simpler system into the bigger complete system if it's complete really. So, and here we have a hidden rock.
Julia, Zibach company. You said one of the most dangerous defaults is the forgotten stakeholder. In the current team, do you have processes described on how to detect stakeholders, when they are detected, and how not to forget them? Yes, they are described, but it isn't a manual. The main issue here is that not always, even if we want to, we will get those stakeholders. It's very interesting that in big companies, particularly Russian ones, when the project is initiated by not businesses but IT departments, they will not get they will not give out any stakeholders, even if there is a demand. Never in Russia came across a situation when an integrator gave up on the project. Thank you. The question was also very interesting. Hi, Yaroslav. I'd like you to focus on the feedback when you said that from the third signal I understood that the process would not launch, but I was wondering why it is responsibilities of yours to get the signal, to understand that the signal, catch it from the client. It looks like it should be a management issue, of course. Each and every should be looking for such exceptions in their place. But why these issues? Why was it done by you? Well, basically, I was a project manager at the time, not an analyst. But uh, they they helped me to get on a business trip, and I detected the problem easily. Do you think that testing the requirements before putting the project into the development will be able to help find those defaults? Well, it can, because when we have a ready-made scope and the whole picture already available in the framework of contradictions and the picture seems uncontradictory, then you're lucky. But if there is a certain default in a concrete domain, it's fine. But if there is a lack of time, everybody thinks that the scope covers the full functionality, may not go through. So the answer is 50-50. Oh, one more question. Did it ever happen that you left the default for developers? That's a great question. There is not forgotten that problematic stakeholders when I was working in one of the top 10 commercial banks. I was heading the project from the side of the client and understanding that we involved in security, we bury the project, we did the following. We described the scope, we approved it, and went to the info security department, and they asked us why there were not such a system out of the box. We understood that we just needed to show something to them to get through. We showed them the diagram, showed them our scope and the subsystem of info security. Then we included the phrase that development of the info security system is not covered by this very project, and the info security department was satisfied. So that's how we got through. The topic of your presentation reminded me of the following. There is a requirement classification according to the Khan model. Expected, satisfied, and something else. What you told us is linked the requirements that are on the very bottom. When an implementer in IT contractor and IT client meet. While observing them, not a client, nor the contractor can name some issues that are actually there, but to defeat that, you need to cover all the things that are not actually named, or check the list of the stakeholders and alternative branches. How else can we come to the head of the client? If people come from different backgrounds, I have a pool of analysts. Not a single specialist works on that, so and a person is doing their best to solve the test, but they are not as tough and domain experts to catch this problem. If you think so, then it's probably right. I think there's some contradiction at the intuitive level. Now, probably you are not have a meeting with someone or accept the risk and say that the risk is 80-20 principle will be involved. If you have time, usually analysts have time for that. Not just storm them, but accept it. Include additional risk percentage, at least in terms of time frame. Just to accept it and feel this underwater storm. Sometimes when you tell the guys questions about that they should come up with requirements for a calculator, person is doing their best, and you understand that the web interface description is great, but there's no limitation that it cannot be software complex. I don't know if it's a shown example, but the calculator is something that everybody knows. So it's working with allowances. Indeed, I'll give you an example from a different field. Evgeny Kulikovsky, a Russian writer, once wrote about engineers who were supposed to go through space and time. When one of the ships was given a special signaling device, scientists understood that this move is possible. But when they sent a human, they understood that on the other side there's a magnetic impulse that kills all the equipment, so they could not send any signals back. So, what do you think was the most interesting question? Most interesting question was asked by the last person. Thank you once again for your presentation.